Hi guys, it's Howard. Sorry about the Facebook Live thing. This is going to be a mostly unscripted demo and discussion about basic amplification of resonator guitars, um, specifically the Spider Bridge dobro style resonator guitar. But before we get started, let me just sort of discuss a couple of reasons why you should consider plugging in and several why you should not consider plugging in. First of all, why you should consider plugging in. The obvious reason is able to play it moderately to very loud volumes without feeding back. I'll say off the offset that no pickup or guitar, for that matter, is 100% feedback proof. You can feedback a Telecaster, for crying out loud, or a Stratocaster, solid body guitar. But the current state of pickups allows the setups to be very feedback resistant. So the number one reason I suspect for plugging in is that you'll be able to play it sufficiently high volumes without feeding back. Microphones are prone to feedback at very high volume levels. There have been a number of pickups developed over the years. I think I started with the McIntyre pickup back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I started out with a Spider Bridge mounted pickup, and then for some reason unknown to me, went to probably one of the worst pickups available, which was the McIntyre Feather, which attached directly to the cone. Later pickups were used that I've tried. Lace still does make a pickup for dobro, which is more of a magnetic mag pickup. The Shirtlers sounded terrific, but again, those were transducer microphones and were not really feedback resistant. And it wasn't until Fishman developed the Nashville, otherwise known as the Jerry Douglas pickup, that really became, in my opinion, a viable solution. So in addition to playing at very high volumes with a feedback resistant product, flexibility, if you need the flexibility of being able to control your sound between tunes, between a ballad and a breakdown, or if you need to if you're playing in genres that demand specific effects, you'll not be able to do that at least easily with a microphone. And so if you need control, ultimate control, the pickup is really the only way to go, unless you have a dedicated sound man, which is able to, change your sound and add and subtract effects from tune to tune. Not many of us have that luxury, and I certainly do not. Mobility is a factor. I hate if you are required on your stage performance to perform and not be tied to a microphone. That is, if you are required to move about the stage and still maintain your pickup. Still maintain your part. Let's face it, it's impossible to do that with a stand-mounted microphone. There are clip-on mics which help, but again, the clip-on mics sound rather nice, but are much more prone to feedback than pickups. So mobility is an issue. So we have the ability to play at very loud volumes, the requirement for flexibility, and the requirement for mobility on stage. Three critical things. Two reasons why you should consider not having a pickup. And during my tenure at Big Guitars, pretty much for a decade, I've heard all kinds of reasons for having a pickup, and I've actually discouraged people from mounting a pickup for a couple of reasons. The number one reason is, hey, I got to have a pickup because I went to my local bluegrass jam, and they told me that I couldn't be heard at the jam. Well, that's really that's really a factor of the jam dynamics themselves, or and I hesitate to mention this because of generalities, but a lack of technique. You've got to be able to pick harder. You've got to be able to be heard. It's an acoustic instrument that requires a certain amount of attack, and you have to be able to attack that instrument in such a way that you extract tone and volume. And if you can't do that, then a pickup, frankly, will not help. Pickup will probably just irritate everyone else around you. And the second factor for not having to pick up, frankly, is the cost involved. So I'm about to demonstrate a pretty basic system. It's been the same system I've used for pretty much 10 years. And some of it is even older technology. But even so, the entry cost for installing a pickup and a guitar is significant. And it's one of those things where installing a pickup is inevitably a rabbit hole where as soon as you install it, you've discovered other things that you really need in order to really enhance the system and make it worthwhile in live performance. And that all adds up to dollars. And if you don't have the dollars, then you should, frankly, not worry about the pickup and go on and do other things. Okay? Well, from here, I will basically show you my pedal board. It's pretty sloppy. It's very functional. It's the same pedal board I've used basically for almost, like I said, almost a decade. Some of the technology in it is very old. I'll point that out. It's definitely not a Cadillac system. It's definitely a Chevrolet system. And I'll try to point out where you can save a few dollars if you decide to go with something like this. Okay, so stand by. I'm going to switch cameras and we'll take a look at the pedal board. Before I get going, the signal path basically is going to be from the pedal board directly into a digital audio workstation. There will not be a microphone involved. So when you hear the dobro, it's going to be the dobro through the pedal board, through a Fishman Aura pedal, of which I'll demonstrate a bit, through several effects that I will demonstrate, and then directly to that, and then we'll add that audio to the video unenhanced and let you take a listen at what's going on. Okay? Stand by and we'll switch cameras and carry on from here. Bye-bye. Okay, guys. Here's my pedal board. It's a bit of a mess, but it's very functional. And I'll sort of explain what's going on here, and we'll break it down to the individual components in a minute here. Upper right-hand corner, with the pilot light on, is the Fishman Aura pedal, the Jerry Douglas Aura pedal, which is the first one specifically designed for Jerry and Jerry's setup, and with his images in there. On the lower right-hand corner, let me see if I can. The green pedal is a distortion pedal. It's an Ibanez tube screamer. To the left of that, in the bottom row, is it's a digital delay. This happens to be a Boss DD6, I think. It's probably close to 6 or 7 years old. I have no idea if they still make it anymore, but there's certainly a new version of that. Next to that, to the left of that, is a Boss Reverb pedal, Reverberation RV5, which I know is not made anymore. To the left of that is sort of horizontally haphazard is it's a Whirlwind clean boost pedal. I'll explain a little bit more about that in a bit. In the upper left-hand corner is a Fishman Platinum Pro DI, a direct interject box along with a EQ. This is a first-generation unit. Like I said, it's probably 8 to 10 years old, and there is a new equivalent of that. And to the right of that, between that and the Aura pedal, is it's a Boss CE5, which is a chorus pedal. And a little bit more about that later as well. I'm going to sit down a little bit and first talk about the Aura pedal. Okay, stand by. Let me get seated here. Let me see if I have an input from the guitar. Apparently I do. Okay, well, along with the Nashville pickup, the Fishman Nashville pickup, really what made the whole system really just come alive is the Aura pedal, which, for lack of any better term, adds a number of microphone images into the signal path of the guitar. And the pickup in the Fishman Nashville pickup is an excellent pickup. It is a piezo pickup, and all piezo pickups have a bit of a honk to them, sometimes referred to as a quack. And let me demonstrate this, just the guitar without the Aura pedal and just the raw piezo pickup. Hang on. Have to put picks on. Okay, here we go. Here's the dobro with just the piezo pickup. You hear that sort of honk right there? You hear that? Okay. So, what does the Aura pedal do? Well, it adds that essence of the dobro back into the signal path that the piezo pickup stripped out. So now we have the Aura pedal engaged. Here we go. Okay, it sounds pretty much like an acoustic dobro. Okay, that's the function of the Aura pedal. Now it's got a number of mic settings, and you can adjust the pedal for the amount of dry signal to the amount of processing that the box does. I have never used this box in anything other than 100% wet. In other words, the box is in line 100% of the time, and it processes 100% of the signal. There's also, there are very few controls on this box. There's a trim control on the side, which everyone seems to ignore. Just crank it all the way up if you get one of these things as an output level control. There is of course, a switch that enables you to switch between a variety of images. Which image do I use? Frankly, I just crank the switch around until I find something that sounds good to me at the time, and that's what I go with. And the last control is basically just the amount of processing that the box does. Okay, so for the sake of discussion and for the balance of this demonstration, I'm going to leave the box in at 100% all the time. Okay. Okay, moving right along. In my opinion, the most frequently used effect, and if you're going to buy one effect, it will be a reverb pedal, reverberation. And what is reverberation? Reverberation is what happens normally and naturally when you play a room, when you play a hall. You hear those shimmering reflections back from the walls. You hear them back from tables and chairs and coffee machines. It's just the natural ambience of the room. And what happens when the Nashville pickup is installed in the guitar is, and you're not playing through a microphone, the microphone would normally pick up those nuances of the room, or at least some of the nuances in the room, depending on the qualities of the microphone. The piezo pickup absolutely strips out all of those nuances. So basically what you have is a pretty good signal, but it sounds relatively what we call dry. In other words, it doesn't sound like you're actually playing in a room. So you hear the sound of the dobro. It's very dry, and it doesn't. There's a bit of naturalness missing. So what the reverb pedal does is it puts back into the signal chain what a plugged-in guitar would strip out. So let me punch in a reverb, and we'll add a little bit of essence of a room, albeit artificially, back into the signal path. Hang on. Okay, here we are. Now, if you listen carefully, you'll hear, after the note is played, you'll hear a bit of what's called a tail, a reverb tail. And I can adjust the length of the tail. I can adjust the amount of reverb in the signal chain. In other words, I can make it very wet, what's called very wet, or a little bit drier, and I can adjust the length of that reverb tail. So let me make a couple of adjustments here. I'm going to really crank up the amount of wetness in the signal. That should be pretty obvious to you now. Now, that might be useful to your playing, or it might not be useful to your playing. I think in most cases I'm playing roots music, so if I'm playing a ballad, it wouldn't necessarily be that dramatic. So let me back out. Well, I'll tell you what, let me back off a little bit. Before I do that, let me increase the tail. It's like playing in a big hall. Let me back off. Let me see if this is more natural. Maybe a little more. I think that would probably be a fairly typical setting that I would use for many ballads. And there would be some cases where I wouldn't use that at all if it were sort of something getting closer to bluegrass. The problem is that the reverb would just sort of muck things up, particularly the longer the tail and the greater the percentage of wetness. I think would be probably inappropriate for a lot of stuff approaching bluegrass. So probably not. I'd back off or just take the pedal out of the picture entirely, okay? And by the way, the reverb pedal and the next pedal, the delay pedal, is what I sort of refer to as a spatial effect, S-P-A-C-I-A-L. Spatial effect meaning that basically it emulates playing in a space, and it lets you define the parameters of that space, okay? Okay, onward to my next favorite pedal, which would be a delay pedal. Okay, here is the just the guitar and the aura. And a delay. Well, what's a delay pedal do? Well, you go to the Grand Canyon or whatever, and you go out to the ledge of the North Rim and yell, hello, and it comes back to you, hello, 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 so on and so forth. Okay, that is what your delay pedal does. And we have the capability of of adjusting several parameters of the delay. You can adjust the number of repeats, and you can adjust the duration between repeats. And you can also adjust, again, how much of the delay pedal is actually operating, the percentage of wetness, of delay wetness, into the raw signal coming into the pedal. So let me see what I have set up right here. Okay, so I've got set up right here a pretty wide delay. Let me crank it down a little bit. Okay, this is the way I would normally use a delay pedal on ballads. And I think I got this recommendation from Mike Aldridge. It was basically, he says, shoot for like a 300 millisecond delay with a single repeat, and that will sort of fatten up the way the dobro sounds. So it would make the dobro, well, I don't know how else to describe it except a little fatter, a little less brittle. And it can be used actually very effectively with a reverb pedal. But first of all, let me play a couple of things just absolutely dry without the pedal, and then I'll crank in the delay pedal with just a single repeat of something like 300 milliseconds. Okay, stand by. Okay, dry. Okay, here's a single repeat. So you actually don't really hear a repeat tick, but you do hear that the note is slightly enhanced and is slightly broader than before. Now, the interesting thing, of course, about the delay and delay pedal is that once you start fooling around with it, you can really get somewhat silly. I'm going to crank back up again, back up to about 800 milliseconds. And I recall back for anyone that was had the privilege of going to the Birchmere number 2 back when the Seldom Scene was holding their weekly soirees every Thursday night and everything. You might recall that like in the House of the Rising Sun, Mike Aldridge sometimes at the beginning or at the end of the tune, all of a sudden, to the shock of the crowd, man, there would be all these repeats and people could not figure out how he was getting all those notes in and that effect when he was playing to a microphone. Well, the deal was that the guy running the soundboard basically knew the tune, and basically he had a cue sheet there, so every time Mike would play House of the Rising Sun at a particular point, he'd basically throw on a big delay unit back on the board. Well, this is before these little delay pedals were really widely available, but the crowd went wild, and this is I'll sort of approximate what I think the crowd was sort of heard, and you can sort of understand the amazement when these things happen. So stand by. Okay, that was pretty silly, but you sort of get the idea. Although there weren't very many, I don't think there is many repeats as I've showcased here with the pedal. But I've got the pedal not on a floor right now, so it's not easy for me to reach down and to basically disable the pedal at the appropriate time. But you sort of get the idea, and the sky's the limit as far as the way you want to approach it. Bluegrass, no. But if you're playing rock or something else, yeah, absolutely. Okay, reverb and delay. Okay, next pedal to the right here is an Ibanez Tube Screamer, which is a distortion pedal. I can tell you it's probably one of the least used pedals that I use right now. But about 10 years ago, I was playing in a band that was mimicking classic rock instrumentals, and this of course came in handy. Okay, what is distortion? Well, what can I say? I think distortion was first used accidentally when someone ripped at least the story goes, someone accidentally ripped a speaker cone and basically decided to play through a ripped speaker cone. This is what you get. Okay, so again, here's a dry signal. Okay, now I'm going to crank in a fair amount of distortion. That's for you rock and roll dobro guys out there. That's an Ibanez Tube Screamer. And believe me, I don't use it much anymore. Okay, distortion. Okay, probably my very least used pedal is a chorus effect, which is a modulation pedal. I don't quite know how to explain exactly what it does. Swirly tunes. It's a completely artificial. It doesn't mimic anything in nature at all. It's completely artificial. I used this at a time when I was again playing sort of rock dobro, and we were doing sort of 70s funk type of stuff. So came in handy back then. So here's that. Here's what a chorus sounds like. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong place. Get the idea? There you go. Maybe combined with a little reverb. Okay. Okay, last, well, next to the last, I'm looking at time here. I may have to reset the camera. In the lower left-hand corner is it's a clean boost pedal. And basically controlling volume, of course, is an issue. I mean, you're not going to be playing at the same volume as while you're taking a lead or solo as you are when you're playing backup. So you're going to need some method to control volume. And that means either a volume pedal or something else. And I cannot operate a volume pedal while standing up. So basically a clean boost pedal allows me to preset levels between solo and backup and just toggle between a solo level and a backup level. Okay, so right here we have A level. And a higher level. Make it a little more dramatic. Get the idea? It's pretty simple. That's the only function that puppy does. Okay, I'm going to reset a camera here and then talk about the very last thing on the pedal board, which is the DI box. Okay, stand by. Okay, last but not least is probably a mystery to a lot of folks. It's a DI box, which allows me to do two things. And again, this is very dependent on the way you are going to be gigging. The DI box, in this case, it's a combination DI and EQ, allows me to do two things. First of all, it does allow me to put the EQ a signal, although frankly, I never use it as an EQ. As you see, everything is set flat on that box right now. And it allows some output control as well. Really, I use it as a safety gap for in case I get into a situation where I have some extraordinary feedback issues that I can't or we can't deal with. So it has a phase switch. I can go back and forth. I can EQ out offending frequencies if it comes to that. But frankly, in a decade, I can't remember actually ever using the EQ function for that in an emergency. What I primarily use it for is is to take the signal from the pedal board and split it. And it depends on how I gig. In some cases, in some venues where I am providing my own monitor, and the amp is also basically feeding the front of the house. In other words, it's a fairly small place, and you got an amp on stage, and everyone's listening to the amp. Basically, this one single lead basically goes to the amp, and that's all there is to it. In larger venues, though, particularly where there is a front of the house console, what I can do is I can still use that signal to go to the amp and use the amp as an onstage monitor. But there's also a balanced out, a microphone out, XLR type of cable, where I can simply hand to a sound guy and say, here's the feed off of my pedal board. Do whatever you want with it. I don't care, because I'm going to adjust what I want to listen behind me with that monitor amp. And I can tell you that sound guys are very, very appreciative of that. You hand them a low impedance XLR cable or an output, and they just go ahead and go to town, and they can tailor that signal to whatever that venue requires. So that is basically what I use the DI box for mostly, is basically just splitting a signal. It's a very handy device. I can tell you that You don't absolutely need it if you're only gigging one way, but if you're gigging in a variety of venues where splitting the signal monitor to front of house is useful, I really recommend getting some kind of a DI, either with or without EQ. There are plenty of them on the market, and active DIs range, good ones range anywhere from a couple $100 on up. Passive ones for less. So, in other words, passive ones that don't require power. Okay, this might be a good time to talk about costs here, because there are costs, and I want to talk about amps just a little bit too before I get out of here. So, there's no denying that we're talking expense. At today's dollars, I happen to look up, since most of the stuff is a decade old, what things are going for these days. Starting with the guitar, of course, if you don't already have the pickup installed in the guitar, I think the raw pickup is around a little bit less than $200. I really recommend mounting it in either a Beard adjustable spider or a Schoonover modular spider. You don't want to really be installing these in a standard number 14, and many imported spiders won't even accept this. They're just the wrong thickness. So what are we talking about? We're talking about $175, $180 for the pickup, $75 for a new spider. I checked with Beard to see what their labor cost was for pickup installation. They're talking $75. The Douglas Aura pedal these days is, I think, slightly less than $400, if I'm not mistaken. It's a $300 plus dollars. So you can start adding things up. When it comes to effects pedals, these are Chevrolet pedals. I can tell you that each of these pedals here costs around $150. I can tell you that there are thousands of different pedals out there, and there's just a huge used market of effects pedals. Guitar players are buying and selling pedals every day, and I think I probably paid on average of $75 a pedal for these things. If I were to make a number one choice of which pedal I would use, I would certainly go for the Reverb pedal first before anything. Delay pedal after that, and everything else is basically up to you and the way you gig. This is the DI I have is the first generation Fishman pickup. The new one is very fancy. It's a lot of money. There are other alternatives out there. I think LR Bags makes a whole series of them out there. I think actually Fishman actually makes a stripped down unit of that too. I would certainly look into that, but you're certainly talking hundreds of dollars there. So that is basically the bad news on expense. Like I say, once you get the obligatory pickup and Aura pedal, then everything else is basically gravy, but some of it may be necessary gravy too, and you're going to have to, I think, adjust your expectations and your pocketbook accordingly. One last thing before I get out of here, and okay, guys. Last but not least, if you are relying on stage for something else other than the front of the house, you're going to have to get an amp. And this is what I've been using since probably since 2012. This is a Fishman Loudbox. It is an acoustic instrument amplifier. It's a 2-channel amp. It is specifically designed for acoustic instruments. I will just encourage you that if you're going to make a real investment in this thing, eventually I encourage you to buy an amp, whichever one it is, specifically designed for acoustic instruments. I've tried pedal steel amps, I've tried guitar amps, and of course they amplify, but it just does not sound correct. So the Fishman Loudbox AER is out there also. I think there are probably others. AER is a much pricier alternative. They're just Rolls-Royce amps again. This is the Fishman Loudbox, which is what the Artist. I think this is their middle sized amp. There's also a smaller one than this. This is a dual channel amp. It has built-in effects, which I don't use because I want to control them as I go. It has a built-in feedback elimination, which can be useful. You can sort of adjust the level of tweeter. The other thing I'll point out is that this particular amp, and I think all of them share this, is that also has a DI built into the amp. So that DI I have on my pedal board is redundant to the DI in this if I am using this. Let me see if I can't turn this around. Hang on a minute. By the way, it's light. There you go. So each of these things has each of the two channels has an output along with a master output for the channel. It does have a foot switch controller for the built-in effects, which again I do not use at all, and it has an audio input for other stuff as well. I'm staring at the back because, frankly, I don't use a lot of this at all. So there is redundancy between the DI that I'm using on my pedal board and this, and basically that's fine. It's really the way that I gig, because some venues will supply me a monitor feedback, and if they do that, I don't need to haul an amplifier with me. I can use the DI, I can give them a signal, they can reroute something back to me, and everything is good. So, and I'm all about saving weight and not dragging crap to gigs, okay? So there you go. I don't know what the current street price is, but it's more than a few $100. It's probably $400 or $500, I would imagine. But Fishman Loudbox, if all you have is like a Fender Blues Junior or a Pro Junior or whatever, yeah, sure, by all means, go ahead and use that if you need the plug-in. Well, guys, that's folks, that's it. I think I've covered basically everything I had intended to cover. Sorry about the Facebook thing. Speaking of which, do not buy this product. Do not. It is crap. It is junk, and it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. Learn from my mistakes. So that's basically everything I had intended on covering. I hope it has been of some use to you. It's all pretty basic stuff. Really, it all depends on the way you gig. In spite of the fact that there are not a lot of gigs going on right now. But something to think about at least. Hope it was useful. Hope it was informative, entertaining. And maybe we'll pick another topic or two to do a little bit later on and upload. We'll see what transpires, okay? So thanks for tuning in. Oh, if you have any questions at all, you can feel free to email me direct. My email address is HLP, D-O-B-R-O, HLP like Paul, dobro, @gmail.com. And I hang out at most of the dobro forums, or at least I lurk. Drop me a line if you have any questions at all. Happy to answer them. And meanwhile, my only advice to you folks is just keep on practicing. Keep on practicing. Okay? Take care. Ciao for now. Bye-bye.